Okay, here we go. Raw review. I don't know what episode this is at this point. I've lost track. I think maybe three. I think three. We'll call it three. Maybe it's four. It's definitely at least three. So this show was the show after Royal Rumble, of course. And usually, I think we're all pretty accustomed to the show after a pay-per-view not exactly being, excuse me, not exactly being the greatest show, right? I mean, they're usually kind of just setting up for whatever happened coming out of the pay-per-view. In this case, though, what happened coming out of the pay-per-view was something kind of monumental and kind of look forward to, and it's the road to WrestleMania, and it all really kind of starts in earnest right now. And the show opened with Seth Rollins in the ring talking about winning the Royal Rumble and celebrating, and he's talking about how he didn't know whether he wanted to fight Daniel Bryan for the SmackDown Championship or whether he wanted to challenge Brock Lesnar for the Raw Championship, and the crowd was chanting, "Take his belt." It took me a while to figure out what they were chanting, but listening close enough, I figured it out. They're chanting, "Take his belt." And, I think that's what we all want. And I thought that was a pretty cool chant. And then they started chanting, "Slay the Beast," which was also, it sets up for the Brock Lesnar is a bad guy, not just because of his, written in persona, but I think we have a tendency to think that wrestlers that don't talk to us are bad guys. If you need an advocate like Paul Heyman or with Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush, I think that sets you up to be distancing yourself from the fans, which is classic heel maneuver, right? I mean, that's exactly what they're doing when they come out and they say that when Elias comes out and says that he's not going to perform for this crowd, or I'm not going to perform in Kansas City, or when Dean Ambrose says that Pittsburgh stinks or whatever. Like, this is this classic heel stuff. It's to separate yourself from the masses. And in wrestling, much like I think in real life, we think that is bad. That's bad guy stuff. We don't in real life, we don't tend to look at celebrities, not to talk about that too much or anything, but we don't tend to look at celebrities that don't act like they're just normal people in quite the same way that outside of maybe Instagram culture or whatever, but the celebrities that seem like they're normal and they're cool, we tend to like them better. We feel more connected to them. And I think that, it's the same thing with wrestling. The superstars who talk about how grateful they are for the fans and how connected they feel to the fans, those are always going to be the faces. And so Brock is set up to be a heel because of because of the Paul Heyman situation, but also because of never being on Raw and never wrestling. So this is a situation that feels more organic, I think, than a lot of face versus heel confrontations within wrestling, because Seth was the fighting champion when he was Intercontinental Champion. We got to see a good match for the Intercontinental Championship throughout his entire tenure with the belt. So, and even for a lot of his time without it, when he was wrestling to get it back, or part of programs to get it back with Dolph Ziggler, or then with Dean Ambrose. I think there was even a program with Elias where Elias might have had the belt for like a day or a week, not a day, but about a week before a pay-per-view. I think. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was now, but I think that happened early in the year, maybe around May or something like that. So I'm I'm on board for this. There's a lot of people on the internet talking like, oh, we've seen Seth and Brock fight before. Yeah, who cares? Okay, who cares if we've seen them fight before? This is different. This feels different. The way they're setting up the face versus heel interaction seems different. It seems, like I said, more organic because we're not just being told that Brock is a bad guy. Most of us at this point are actively annoyed with the dude and would really like to see the belt on anybody else. And with Seth Rollins is better than just anybody else. This is somebody that we have at least some suspicion to assume that we will get if he wins at WrestleMania, if Seth wins at WrestleMania and takes the belt, we can assume that we're going to get a Universal Championship match. And hopefully, again, not every Raw, but the belt will somehow be involved in every Raw. We'll see it on TV. And we're going to get a Universal Championship match on Raw every now and then. I would argue probably to the tune of once a month. And that is just so much better than where we've been with Raw and with status with that championship belt. I like watching wrestling that isn't for belts too, just as much as I like watching wrestling that is for belts. But the story is part of it too, and the story adds to the wrestling. And the story without the belt can get a little bit. I think that could be part of the reason why the writing on Raw has been struggling so much, is because they're working with a mid-card belt and just trying to be creative with trying to get you to be interested in feuds between other people, because they got a mid-card belt, a women's belt, and a tag belt to work with. They're riding on three wheels. That's should be argued that it should be enough to write a good show, but the fact is that the other show is an hour shorter and working with a whole nother segment of built-in drama that you don't need to work that hard to write around, and that's the belt, right? So I'm excited for Raw going forward, the road to WrestleMania going forward. At this point in the show, we still don't technically know who Seth Rollins is going to be calling out and what belt he's going to be going after. Dean Ambrose, Triple H comes out and starts telling Seth, oh, I believed in you all along and all this stuff. And Dean Ambrose eventually comes out and reminds Seth that actually it was Dean that believed in Seth all along, and that Triple H is kind of a fair weather fan of Seth Rollins. And Dean, I thought for a minute, was trying to like do some frenemies stuff or something, like we're friends but we're enemies right now, and let me remind you of your worth as your friend or what, I don't know. But then they fought. They asked for a match. They got the match. And Dean it was kind of samey, you know what I mean? Like Dean kind of jobbed for Seth. And then kind of jobbed for Nia too. Because Nia Jax and Tamina came out for their tag match while Dean was still in the ring and wanting to talk. And Nia kind of knocked him around a bit. And Dean, he didn't run away. It's not like he was literally sprinting, but he ran away. I don't know if we're expecting people to, like men, to hit Nia Jax at this point. But like Dean ran away. So that was a little bit weird, right? And it kind of seemed a little bit cowardly, maybe, in that situation. I don't know how to feel about it. One thing that was all over the wrestling internet today was that Tuesday, the day after Raw, was that Dean Ambrose is likely stepping away from the company after WrestleMania. He refused to sign a new contract that apparently included a pay raise. There's reports that he feels that his position with the company since he's been back has been a little bit hokey. And I think he said in the past that he doesn't like the hokey stuff in wrestling. So, that this could be a sign that he's on his way out of the company. I would like to believe that that's not true. I think Dean Ambrose is an asset to the WWE. If you're a fan, he's a good reason to watch. Usually makes for good TV. I was excited to see the potential for his rivalry with Seth Rollins going forward. I kind of thought maybe we might be seeing the end of that anyways when Seth Rollins won the Royal Rumble, but maybe not, right? There's no reason that we can't still have a rivalry with Dean that's meaningful while Seth is vying for that belt. But yeah, those are the rumors right now that Dean's on his way out of the company. Again, I hope not, but so the next thing that happened, Baron Corbin kind of restarted a program with Kurt Angle. You'd had a bit of a rivalry with Kurt Angle going previous to this. And that kind of has been rekindled, maybe. I don't know about you guys, but I hope they do something where Kurt comes back and just really wallops on Baron, because it's hard for me to see them put Kurt Angle in a unitard out there and have him job for Baron Corbin. I mean, maybe you could argue that that's not totally what happened on Raw this week, but it felt like it to me. It felt like a legend was jobbing for Baron Corbin, and not the guy. If it was Braun Strowman that Kurt was in a program with, and Kurt kind of got jobbed by Braun Strowman, you could argue that it's good because Braun is a major piece of the future of the company. And so you could argue that that's maybe a good thing long term, but I don't see any, unless Kurt's going to come back and get revenge in a big way, and it's going to be really satisfying for us. I don't see any upside to having Kurt Angle job to a guy like Baron Corbin. None. The next thing of like note, Finn Balor's promo was really cool, talking about how Brock attacked him and Brock beat him, and then Brock came back and beat on him again. And you know why? Because he made Brock believe. And that was a cool little promo. I got, chicken skin. And because I'm a fan, that's probably a lot of it. I'm a big fan of Finn Balor, but it was cool. He lost, but I thought it was a valiant fight, and for his character in a wrestling storyline sense, I thought it built up his character a lot. And then when Bobby Lashley came out there, kind of interrupted Finn. Bobby Lashley comes out, beats on him pretty good. I wonder if that's the beginning of a rivalry going forward with Finn Balor and Bobby Lashley, and maybe we'll see Finn get the Intercontinental title at some point in time. I mean, I'd be fine with that. I'm sure you'd be fine with that too if you're a fan. I know it's a mid-card belt, and we had it teased to us, not only with him being the first ever Universal Champion, but we also had it teased to us recently that maybe he was going to be Universal Champion again. With the match against Roman Reigns, and then the match against Brock Lesnar. I don't think any of us really thought he was going to win the Roman Reigns fight, but I had a sneaky suspicion, 30% chance he might actually win that Brock Lesnar fight. I could see why they would write it that way. So maybe he's going to start a program with Bobby Lashley and get that Intercontinental title, and then we'll see him as a fighting champion maybe every week. Hopefully they don't do something like they did with Shinsuke in the United States Championship and put the United States Championship, take it off of one cool guy, which in this case, the Intercontinental belt is not, in my opinion, on a cool guy. But to go back to the United States Championship, they took it off of Jeff Hardy to put it on Shinsuke Nakamura. Both are cool. I like both of them. They sit on opposite sides of the spectrum, but I like both of them, right? Just to have that belt never be on TV again. So hopefully they don't do something like that where they put the Intercontinental Championship on somebody that we'd like to see it on, only to have us see squash matches and just things we don't really need to see on TV. But anyway, I thought that maybe we might be in the midst of seeing a program with Balor in the Intercontinental Championship. Look out for that. I'd love to see it. Then we had a tag match between Natty and her tag partner, whose name is eluding me right now, which is silly, Dana Brooke. We had a match between Natty and Dana Brooke versus the Riot Squad to see who was going to Elimination Chamber to fight for the women's tag titles. And I really thought that we were going to see the Riot Squad eliminated because of everything that happened on Royal Rumble and leading up to it, with Natty's dad's sunglasses and the kind of the program between those two. It seems, though, that Natty got her revenge on the Riot Squad at the Royal Rumble by eliminating 2/3 of them within seconds of their entrance to the ring. And so having to worry about Natty getting her revenge at this point apparently was over, because the Riot Squad will be moving on to Elimination Chamber to get those tag titles, or to vie for the tag titles. And I think that's good, and I think it's ultimately the better choice, right? The Riot Squad are a more entertaining tag team for my money than Dana Brooke and Natty would be. Not that Natty's a bad wrestler. She certainly showed her best performance of, I think, of the last year at Royal Rumble. But I'd rather see the Riot Squad in that match. And ultimately, if we're talking about who we'd rather see in the match, we're talking about who we would rather see with the titles. And I would rather see the Riot Squad with those titles than I would Natty and Dana. So that's kind of, where same thing with, they had another match to see who would be getting into Elimination Chamber. I brought up Nia Jax earlier, how she was coming out with Tamina for a tag match. They beat Alexa Bliss and Mickie James, which again is good, because I would rather see Nia and Tamina with the belts than, Alexa Bliss and boring Mickie James. Not that if Alexa had a different tag partner, I might not say it could have been either way or something, but given that her tag partner is Mickie James, I don't really care. And they made the right choice with Nia and Tamina moving on. So far we know that Elimination Chamber, the Riot Squad will be involved vying for those tag titles, and so will Nia and Tamina. So Ronda comes out. That's the next big thing of note that happens. Ronda comes out to congratulate Sasha Banks and talk about their tag match, their championship match from Royal Rumble. And she is just getting booed. I've never seen it. I don't think I've ever seen Ronda get booed, ever. And I'm like, why are they booing her? Because they want Becky. That's who they want. That's why they're booing her. And it was just insane. And it got to Ronda, actually, she wasn't expecting that. Usually, more than half the time, it seems like when they come out and they get a reaction, they get the reaction that they were expecting, right? Especially with somebody like Ronda, who is, babyface to the max lately. You're expecting a cheer, and they've been getting it, right? So Ronda comes out and she looks like surprised by all the boos, and she's having a hard time making it through her promo, which also is like a relic of like 6 or 8 months ago. Ronda's been doing fine on the mic lately, and she is struggling. And she actually stutters and then says to the crowd, or she stutters, or she flubs a line or something. I think she called it stuttering. And she says to the crowd, "Oh, look, you made me stutter. Yo, you got me." What is this? Like, that was a situation where, like, somebody came out expecting one type of reaction and had to deal with a hostile crowd. And I don't think Ronda knew how to deal with it. Ronda versus Bayley was a good fight for a show after a pay-per-view. We all knew how it was going to end, but Bayley still managed to put on a good show in doing so and in losing. I wouldn't call it completely jobbing to Ronda. Ronda was still dealing with her injury, so they were playing that up, and some good in-ring storylines that carry over from WrestleMania. That's the way they do it over in New Japan. They don't do a lot of promos on the shows. I don't know that they really do any. They do some promos outside of the shows, kind of like if you watch UFC at weigh-ins and press conferences and stuff. The fighters will kind of promo on each other, pro wrestling style, a little bit these days. or maybe actually less these days, but quite a bit in the past. That's kind of how they do it over in in New Japan, NJPW. And so like they carry over a lot of that. A lot of the story is told in the ring, and they will carry over things like injuries from match to match, and they expect you to be paying attention. And so they did that with the Ronda Bailey fight. And so that was pretty cool and well done and good writing and good for them to expect us. And they did kind of mention it in the announcements. The announcers, they kind of mentioned, oh, she's still dealing with the injury from Royal Rumble. But, that's still, they kind of like good for them to kind of like put the onus on us to remember that she was dealing with an injury from Royal Rumble. And they showed that in the ring. I like that. But Becky comes out afterwards. After this fight, Becky comes out, and the reaction is just huge. She's out, and she's calling Ronda Ronnie. She's calling her Ronnie. That's nuts. And Ronda is getting booed. And Becky comes out and says she's coming for Ronda at WrestleMania, which I mean I called that. A lot of people did, but I mean I called that. And the Ronda Becky spot was just really good. And Ronda actually toward the end of it started to, I don't know if it was written in or it was like she kind of went with it on the fly and absorbed the heel heat that she was getting, but she leaned full into it by the end of the promo with Becky in the ring. She was understanding that she was the bad guy, and she was fine with being the bad guy. So Mania is going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. The road to WrestleMania is going to be great. I love that somebody from SmackDown is challenging for a title on Raw. I don't care if it's a men's title. I don't care if it's a women's title. In this case, it is a women's title. I love that. There should be a little bit of cross talk between the brands. I think that's something that's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited about it. So we'll see. I think that between those two, Road to WrestleMania is going to be great. We're expecting Seth to come out and declare who he's going to be going after at WrestleMania, and Brock comes out instead. But I guess before that, we get a spot where Braun and Seth meet up backstage, and Braun says to Seth basically to go after Brock. He says, hey, you earned it. Now go make the right decision. And so that was a pretty cool spot. And then we had a little, Make-A-Wish spot on Raw, and those always make me cry. WWE does cool stuff for kids. That's good. It wasn't like that when we were kids. So I'm glad that it is now. And anyway, probably didn't need to mention that, but still it was an emotional, it always is an emotional spot. So I said that Strowman was coming out, and then he talked to Seth for a second. He was coming out for a match with Drew McIntyre, and during that match, Baron Corbin came out and attacked Braun Strowman, and him and Baron and Drew teamed up on him a little bit, and Brock was kind of weathering that storm a little bit, but eventually he succumbed. And I could deal, I think, with a program that had Baron Corbin and Drew McIntyre and kind of aligned against Braun Strowman. And maybe he goes and finds a different, he went and found some buddies last time when he was having his program with the Shield. Maybe he finds a different buddy this time, somebody who's a face. It seems like they want Braun Strowman to be a face, but they've done a lot to align him with bad guys within the last 6 months. But there's also been little parts where he calls, Finn Balor his buddy and stuff like that. So I think it'd be neat to see Baron Corbin and Drew McIntyre in a program against Braun Strowman and Finn Balor. I think that'd be a fun program. I think that would make for good TV, and it'd be a good use of Drew McIntyre if he's not going to be involved in a belt. It'd be a good use of Braun and Finn if they're not going to be involved in belts. And I mean, if you're ever going to use Baron Corbin, it might as well be with 3 other people who are strong, and he's that fourth piece that we're not relying on for much of the drama, right? So it's kind of perfect for him too. So maybe look out for something like that. I'll be looking out for something like that. So Seth comes out to the ring, or at least we're expecting him to, and Brock comes out instead. And Paul Heyman's yakety yakking like he always does, and nobody cuts a promo like Paul Heyman. Sometimes they're more effective than others. There's certainly moments where he delivers a line like nobody else can in the WWE. Seth comes out and confronts Brock, so we know. I think that was as saying it as much as we needed it said. He's going after Brock, and Brock gives him 5 F5s in a row. And Seth pulls himself up into the bottom rope and then asks, "Is that all you got?" And apparently it wasn't, because Brock came and he gave him a 6th F5. And the road to WrestleMania is going to be long and arduous for the Kingslayer, but we are well on our way. I'm very excited. I'm a little bit bummed out because I'm not all that excited for SmackDown tonight. Maybe it'll change my mind. I don't know what I'm looking forward to on SmackDown. That might be a little bit of a drawback to having Becky challenging for a belt that's on Raw, is unless she's still going to be going after the Women's Championship on SmackDown. Now our main thing over there is for the road to WrestleMania slacking a little bit. Not to say that there won't be good matches. Andrade has been great. Rey Mysterio is always awesome. They have a lot of talent. And Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, I'll watch that anytime. So it's not that they don't have a lot of other talent on SmackDown to work with, but I'm wondering, as far as the road to WrestleMania specifically, if it doesn't take away a little bit of the heat from SmackDown to have Becky challenging for a title on Raw, unless she's going to work her ass off to get that belt away from Asuka over on SmackDown and try to be the single, sole, unified women's champion after SmackDown. Look for that. I'll see you soon.